Good morning, friends. Usually I say good evening. It's Tim Kirby Russia here, a special morning edition of the program. I got a really good question that I wanted to do a live stream about, but life is insane, and I only have time in the morning, so who knows? Will anyone actually be listening to this live stream? Well, I'm kind of always surprised people listen to any live stream. But anyways, who the hell am I? I am an American who lives in Russia, and I have been working in the Russian media for quite some time, so I definitely have an insider look into Russian society that very few people do. Especially the English teachers. No offense, English teachers, but come on. Anyways, our question comes from John today, and it's a question I've been kind of been asked by a lot of people, but John put it together in like 2 sentences, and it's amazing. So, his question, he even writes, quick question. Why did Russia allow the Kursk incursion? They should have animated the intruders, get the civilians out, and conduct a rolling thunder operation. Bad president? There must be a reason. Okay, he also says he hopes I'm feeling better because I've been sick. So thank you very much, John, and I am feeling a bit better, but I'm still coughing. Hopefully I won't be coughing during this live stream. Okay, so about the Kursk incursion. Well, we have to always kind of break things down into, especially when we're dealing with like people's motivations or why something happened. So we have with the Kursk incursion either the Ukrainian NATO side beat Russia, they played them, they found a hole in the gap and they just got in and Russia didn't expect it, or the Russians allowed this to happen. So there's 2 ways. So let's look at the first thing that, maybe NATO and Ukrainians did find a solution to the problem of super ultra mega surveillance. I know that's not a very professional term, but in terms of this war, one of the reasons why it kind of looks like World War I again is because there is complete and total surveillance from satellites and drones, and essentially any major movement of anything attracts a lot of attention, and that thing that's moving gets hit. That is the reality of the war that's been explained by numerous military experts who actually, were in the military, unlike myself. So I'm taking that opinion from other people who are much more wise in terms of military affairs. So, I think, to an extent, one of the reasons why the Russians could have been fooled is that, first off, if you look at sort of like the map, you can find a bunch of maps of the kind of contact line, or basically everything that's happening between Ukraine and Russia. You can see on that map that there's some huge areas where nothing is going on, and nothing has been going on since the start of the war. And first off, perhaps the Kursk region wasn't seen as a priority target because it's so lowly populated. It's mostly woods. And like I said, there are places that aren't being attacked, despite the fact that they seem, at least to the pedestrian, to be somewhat undefended, right? So it was a weak point in the armor, but then again, there can be weak points in the armor where you never think you'll actually ever get hit. And that's a big part of it. The other part is they may have found some way, again, with total surveillance, because the news media reported that first 1,000 Ukraine NATO troops, or whatever, NATO mercenaries, let's use the proper terminology, pushed in. And then it was another 1,000, and another 1,000. And it seems like maybe there's some sort of technique that they developed to move a small but not insignificant number of men and machine into the area to that allows them to avoid detection, basically. Like we've heard this expression in this war, when's the big arrow offensive coming? There are no big arrows, because a big arrow gets seen by the satellite and surveillance technology. This is maybe a smaller medium arrow offensive, and perhaps that allowed them to actually beat the Russian system, right? So so again, we're looking at this from the 2. So if this just happened the way it was, they picked a location that Russia didn't think was any sort of priority or really needed to be that seriously defended. They didn't expect an attack, and somehow they were able to fool or get ignored by the total surveillance system, which means all you could say is good for them, good for their officers and planners and all that. They were able to sort of beat the system, but ultimately, doing that, what happened? It happened, the same thing that always happens. The thing that happened during the early phases of fighting in 2014, and the same thing that's happened throughout this war. Whenever the Ukrainians do make some sort of advance, or when the Russians make a major advance, what winds up happening is the Russians surround the Ukrainian forces on 3 sides, and then they just pound away. Guys, I'm thankfully don't know what it's like to be in a war, But I can't tell you, when you're being attacked from almost all sides, it is very tough to deal with, and it is very tough to survive. And so ultimately, well, maybe they beat the system for a few weeks or maybe a few days, but ultimately it's turned into another cauldron, as the Russians call it, and that's not so great. Which leads to the other theory. What if the Russians allowed this to happen? Well, you could see that it formed a nice cauldron. It allowed a lot of Ukraine's elite troops to be stuck, again, in another cauldron, to get blown to bits over the process of Russia just shelling and bombing and surrounding them. And with this cauldron technique, where the Russians either generally offer you either surrender or you have to fall back, because they're surrounded on three sides. So there's only one way to escape. And when there's only one way to escape, and we live in an environment of complete and total surveillance, the troops that are falling back get hit over and over again as they're falling back. This is why Kiev's forces have attained so many casualties, because even retreat will not save your life in these sort of situations. Word of the wise: don't allow yourself to get surrounded on three sides. It's a bad policy. And if you're going to make some kind of major push into Russian territory, then you have to think about that. How do we not get surrounded when we're doing this major push? Well, maybe they beat the super surveillance from satellites, but they didn't beat the super surrounding factor. But anyways, could the here's the conspiracy theory. Could then the Russian government have allowed this to happen to surround the elite troops of Kiev's forces and kill them? I don't know. But I do know is if, excuse me, if they would have done something like that, something a bit ugly and conspiratorial, trust me, they wouldn't bring that up to the public. No government would. Would you? Would you tell your citizens, I know friends, let's just say, we'll take Mexico and the United States. Okay, we'll look at the border. Hey, friends there in El Paso, Texas. I know we kind of had to sacrifice El Paso, Texas, but it really allowed us to surround the elite troops of the Mexican narco baron guys. So, thanks for thanks for abandoning your homes, which we blew up. You can't say that publicly. I don't really think that that's the case. I think it was more the case that someone in some probably NATO base somewhere in West Germany figured out a way to slide 1,000 troops after 1,000 troops and use that to beat the sort of surveillance system. That's what I think personally happened. But, I mean, could there have been some conspiracy? Yeah, but again, that's kind of one of these things where that's war. And the Russian government is obliged to rebuild everything for everyone, so eventually they'll rebuild. I don't know. But, like, one thing that John kind of points out here is, does this mean it's a bad president? Like, what war, especially a war between, so we have the Kiev regime, which is completely backed by NATO. We all see that, so it's sort of a hybrid force. We have Russia. In what war between two major powers can you perfectly protect your civilians? If you think about it, Russia defeated Napoleon, but how many people in Moscow had to lose their homes when they burnt Moscow to the ground and burnt all the resources in Moscow? So imagine that. The government comes and tells you, well, we didn't win the Battle of Borodino, but we effed them up good. So you take all your food and stuff, go run away. We're going to burn all your stuff, your house down. And the French are going to starve to death. It's going to be amazing, guys. You know what I mean? Like, I think John is living, I don't want to diss John because he's one of my longtime followers here. So let me try to put this in a more respectful, a friend-to-friend kind of way. But John, I think you really have high expectations. War isn't a perfect thing. Human beings aren't perfect. They're in any conflict, even the winning side is going to suffer casualties. I think that's a very American way of looking at war. Like, we're going to go to Iraq and bomb them, and if we lose 1,000 guys, that's a tragedy. Well, that's not how this kind of war is shaped out. There's a lot of, civilians that have to be saved, and if you think about it, too, when you compare civilian casualties in the whole Palestine-Israel conflict to Russia, things have actually turned out very well in relative terms for the civilians in this conflict, but there's only so much you can do. So I would say we can't expect people to be perfect, and one mistake doesn't cancel out the fact that, President Putin saved Russia from the decline of the decline is a very soft word, from the living hell that was the 1990s, restored the country, got it to a point where it could withstand the sanctions and the this war, a proxy war, and all the other things, gas prices as well. They tried to put a cap on gas prices. Basically, all the things they used to destroy the Soviet Union, they've used against Russia now, and none of them work anymore. So, if we look at things in the macro, you're allowed to make a mistake like this, if it is even a mistake. So, I try not to be so perfectionist. War involves movement, and ultimately the Russians have said from the beginning that the goal is to demilitarize. Wherever they are, where they're destroying the enemy forces to the point where they break, that's the mission. How the map looks here, there, wherever is a lot less important. So, yeah. Anyways, so John, I think you're getting a little hyper-focused on one thing that could be considered a mistake, when if you look at the bigger picture, things really aren't so bad. In fact, now that Ukraine sent its sort of elite reserve troops in to die for questionable reasons, perhaps to win in the media, that's another, then works out to be in the long run another major victory for Russia, because at some point when there's no reserves, the lines are just going to keep breaking faster and faster and faster. So that's my answer to your question. Anyways, Tim Kirby Russia live stream. Let's see, did anyone comment? Does anyone want to, if anyone wants to talk, do it quick, because I got to get out of here. So let's see. So far, are this, and no one is posting, although a lot of people are listening. We got any talkers here? Let's see. No, guys, no one wants to talk. So anyways, thank you for the 20 people who are watching. Anyways, Tim Kirby Russia signing out.